Sorry, unfortunately.
Hi everyone, it's Zahid here from Abbey Property. I'm just doing a live Q&A for all of you guys. If you've got any questions, make sure you drop a comment down there so I can answer whatever you guys have any questions. My first time doing this, so bear with me just in case. So any questions, do drop them down in the comment right there and I'll be able to read them and respond to you accordingly. Before that, I've had loads of questions in the last couple of weeks, etc., that I've sort of covered with you guys until the questions start rolling in. So, a few of the questions I've been getting mainly from tenants, for example, and landlords have been, for example, what are the upfront costs that sort of are associated with moving into a property? So, agents used to charge an admin fee back in the days. Like about 2 or 3 years back, or roughly. However, since the admin fee ban, they're not able to charge anymore. So right now, it's not much of a fee as such. You're paying a 1 month's rent, and you're also paying a 1 month's deposit. The fees are covered by the landlord themselves, so that's all you need to sort of pay. The deposit is capped at 5 weeks deposit right now. If you are asked for more than that, it's against industry standard, and also it's not a legal it's not a legal requirement for you to sort of comply with that as well, and it's illegal for the agent to actually be asking you for anything more than that. Also, I've been asked a lot about how to reserve a property. Very simple, straightforward process. If it's the first time you're renting out a property, just follow these couple of steps and you'll be perfectly fine. I mean, the main sort of thing that you'll be going ahead with is, obviously, first of all, you'll be having a look at the property with the agent. So you're inquiring online, making sure you check out the property, if you're happy with it, etc. Checking out if it's a house, flat, masonry, whatever you're inquiring about, happy with the pricing, etc. Do definitely check out the area that the property is located in. A lot of the times we tend to get tenants who come in and they don't tend to like the area, waste our time, but also waste your time at the same time as well. So you want to be avoiding that. You want to do minimum viewings for yourself in order to maximize the amount of properties that you get out to, because properties do rent out very fast. The second thing is once you've had a look at the property, you want to put an offer in for the property. So, for example, a property might be on the market for £1,000. If you're happy with the price, fantastic, go ahead with it. If you want to haggle with the agent, that's entirely your choice as well. But bear in mind, right now, a lot of properties are going for exactly the asking price, if not more than the asking price as well. So do keep that in mind. Once you've seen that and made an offer for the property, it's common practice for the agent to ask you for 1 week's reservation deposit. So sorry guys about that. I just had a phone call and just disrupted, etc. Everything. So just bear with me. I totally forgot where I was. I was roughly along the lines of reservation deposit, etc. So once you placed a 1 week's reservation deposit for the property, the agent will start referencing on your behalf to sort of get you into the property. So essentially, what the agent is trying to do right here is trying to present you in the best light possible. For the landlord. So they will take all your details, such as your photo ID, your pay slips, your bank statements, which tend to be the last 3 months. So it's 3 months worth of pay slips, 3 months worth of bank statements, your photo ID, like I mentioned as well. Oftentimes you tend to get a landlord reference from the tenants. You also tend to get employment references also with your employer. If you just joined recently, the best thing to give to an estate agent is a contract of employment, just to show if you're permanent or you're temporary in your position at the place. Once you've got that go through, the final step would be for the agent to carry out a credit check on your behalf, providing the credit check comes through satisfactory, etc., and you don't have any CCJs on your name. The agent would propose yourself forward to the to the landlord for you to be accepted and approved, etc. Generally tends to be that it's only one person that is going through approval at a time. So it's just industry standard just to sort of put one person through it each time. Right, so that's the process of reserving a property. Once you've been accepted, all the standard work starts from there onwards, such as getting your tenancy agreement done, your deposit protected, etc., getting your inventory, etc., everything done just to move you in, and the basic stuff like that, really. I've been asked, what is a holding deposit? So a holding deposit is simply a deposit just to show that you're definitely serious about taking this property going forward. Reason being is because the agent needs some sort of assurance that you're definitely interested in this property, and once the paperwork is done, you're not just going to pull out, etc. Or just sort of gauging your sort of intention, because a lot of the times you tend to get people who say I'm interested, etc. But when it comes down to paperwork and progressing further with it, people tend to sort of get a bit cold. So it's just to show your interest in the property, essentially. That's all it is. What documents will I need? So that's the basic ones I mentioned earlier on for ID, payslip, bank statements, that kind of basic stuff like I answered in the question earlier on. We've had some few cases where, for example, some people are going through their official paperwork with, for example, Home Office, etc. Sometimes they might not have all the documentation on them. However, what you would need to provide is your Home Office letter, just to validate that you're definitely going through the process and you haven't just lost your passport, or that you actually have a genuine right to be able to stay inside the country as well, just to sort of prove that. Give me 1 second. Let's see if we've got any other comments. Right. Okay, cool. How do I pay rent? Standard, depending on every company that you deal with. Most agencies tend to deal with bank transfers. It's just a lot more easier for everyone. It's good for yourself, good for the agent, because you don't have to handle cash. Whenever you're making a payment, we really like it when you put your reference down, as in your property address and your name. All agencies are different. Sometimes they have their own unique ways of doing it, etc. But just very simple, simple sort of stuff to do. Reporting maintenance issues, again, standard stuff. There's loads of different ways you can report your maintenance issue to your estate agent. A lot of estate agents prefer it if you email them. Some of them prefer it if you just drop them a text message or give them a phone call, etc. Those kind of methods people tend to prefer. Can I redecorate my property? That is possible. Totally depends on what agreement you have in your tenancy agreement. So do check that thoroughly. If you can't find it, speak with the letting agent just to find out if you can redecorate or not. Tends to be usually with us, depending on the landlord, etc. We tend to allow mainly that you repaint the property back to the same color or something neutral, etc. And if you do change it, then always should revert it back to a neutral color after you've left the property. But it's best for you to check with your own letting agent just to make sure that you're on the same page as them, because everyone has a different way of working. Right, how do I end a tenancy? So many ways of doing that. Different agencies have different ways that they would prefer you to do it. So just talking about ourselves, we prefer it when we get a 30-day notice. That's our personal preference. So for example, if you give a notice on the 15th, then you can vacate on the 14th of the following month. Sorry, I just keep getting interrupted with a phone call. Next time I know I need to either put it on airplane mode or something, or use a different device. Right, so the question, how do I end my tenancy? Give me 1 second. Let me just check out a few more questions. Sorry about that, just having some technical issues. So obviously this is my first trial run just to see how everything runs out, so we can figure out any teething issues that we can have for the future, so we can figure things out. So hopefully the next step is to not use a mobile phone next time. Right, how do I, so in terms of, for example, notice, like I mentioned earlier on, we as a company, we prefer a 30-day notice, so from the 15th until the 14th of next month, if you decide to give it the 15th, for example. Some companies or landlords tend to have different preferences, so if your landlord wants you to give a complete calendar month, what they might request is, if you do give a notice on the 15th of the month, your notice will not be activated until the 1st of the following month. So essentially, you've given a little bit of this month plus the following month at the same time as well. So everyone is different. It's always best to get them clarity from your landlord or from your letting agent as to exactly how to give a notice. Some people can be a bit fussy about it, so just to be careful about that as well. Furthermore, some companies prefer it when you have a written notice. So just like ourselves, we like it written because it's a lot more clearer as well, in case something, we need to rely on something for the future, for example. So simple, easy method to give your letting agent a notice is either through email or something, for example, in writing, like through a letter, etc. Depending on your agent, again, they might even accept a text message or something, but it just totally depends. Every agent is different. With us personally, we prefer an email. It's a lot more simple, straightforward to sort of deal with. When does a checkout take place? So I've got a question here. When does a checkout take place? So this is essentially, for those of you who are familiar with this, a checkout is something that's done at the end of a tenancy. So your landlord or your letting agent will come around to your property to check out the condition of how the property looks like right now as compared to what it looked like before you moved into the property. So for example, you're looking at all the damages that have taken place in a 6 months period, 12 months period, whatever period of time, etc. So with that, usual practice is to get a checkout done about, usually it tends to be on the day you move out or the day after, but there's something called a pre-checkout, which we like to do as a company ourselves, which is 2 weeks before you move out. So whenever you give a notice, we personally prefer to arrange time with you in 2 weeks' time, where we come around to the property, have a quick look, check out all the wallpaper, etc., everything's like, all the paintings like, or any sort of scuffs that might be somewhere, etc. So we can advise you, please get this sort of stuff rectified. Otherwise, you have to sort of, deduct it from a deposit, and no one really likes that, really, to be honest with yourself. And plus, when you get the work done at a later stage, because sometimes you get it done in an urgent sort of nature, it tends to cost a bit more. Sometimes tenants are not sort of happy with how much they're sort of being charged, etc. as well, and that's simply based on how urgent the job is to be getting done, etc. And the supply and demand of contracts at the time. But for 2 weeks advance, if you allow your agent to come around in 2 weeks in advance to have a look at the property, that gives you ample amount of time to rectify anything that is within your control to be rectified, so you can easily avoid having to pay out of your deposit. So it's basic, really simple things. For example, like a wall, depending on the contractor and depending how big the wall, etc., you might have to pay something like £50, £60, £70 or something. But if you wanted to avoid that cost, you could simply go to B&Q, get a bucket and paintbrush or whatever, a roller, and just easily conduct that yourself instead. And you can easily avoid any disputes or anything with your letting agent or with your landlord. So that's something, it gives you an opportunity for the agent to talk to you or the landlord to talk to you and get things rectified as you move along. All right, a few more questions that I've got come in. Give me 1 second. How do I get my deposit back? A very simple, straightforward process. Depending on the agent that you deal with or your landlord, etc. There's 2 types of deposit registrations. The first one is a custodial, and the second one is insured. Regardless of which way you tend to sort of do it, the process is simple, straightforward. You just drop an email confirmation requesting your full deposit back. or if you know there's any sort of deductions to be made and that you agreed with, then the balance, etc. So us as a company, we use DPS custodial. What that means is the money is transferred to the DPS for them to keep, like a safekeeping in case, let's say for example, a company goes down, the money is still kept somewhere in order to be able to pay the tenant back at a later stage. With our one, personally, for our company, the way we like to do it is the tenant goes online, just simply requests the deposit back from there, and we just go in there, approve it or decline it, etc. Whatever, but tends to be most of the case we approve it because of that discussion already with the tenant as to if we are going to be deducting anything or if we're not, and if we are, then exactly how much. So everything's pre-agreed. Tenant fills in the details and just gets transferred directly from there onwards. If you're an insured scheme, you will need to drop your agent an email to let them know that you'd like to deposit back, whatever the agreement, etc. is, any deductions, etc. all that stuff. And then with an insured, because the agent or the landlord keeps that money, they would transfer the money to you after making a deduction. It's the same for the landlord as well. If he's holding the deposit money for you, he'll make any deductions if he needs to, and forward the money to you into your bank account. Any more questions? If you've got any more questions, just keep commenting there so I can see them on here. I can reply to you guys. Will any deductions be made from my deposit? So exactly the same thing. You'll have to negotiate that with your landlord or your letting agent, whoever it is, to see if there are deductions. But like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the simplest and easiest way to mitigate any deductions is simply by inviting your letting agent or the landlord to come around to your property 2 weeks before you move out, just to make sure that you're all on the same, you're all on the same page. And if there's any discrepancies, to give you a chance within those 2 weeks to rectify it, wherever it needs to be rectified. A good point is to refer back to your inventory. Really nice and simple. Check out the inventory that you might have got from your agent or your landlord. And what that does is it gives you an opportunity to reflect back at the condition the property was given to you. So most inventories are written as well as photographed, so you'll be able to easily refer to the photos to see the condition that was given and etc. How to get a landlord reference for the next landlord that you're moving on to. So again, a very simple, easy question and a simple answer to that. With us, we just ask you simply just drop us an email, and I'm guessing with any other agent it'll be exactly the same. Either get your referencing company to drop us an email directly, we can sort of reference it out, or just email us directly. We can do that depending on the agent you want. You will want to find out their processes of how they sort of work as well. And with many landlords, it's exactly the same process of working, where you just drop an email directly to the landlord and you get a response back, etc. Any more questions? What I'll do, I'll just leave it on for another minute. If any more questions come through, I'll answer them. If not, then we can end it. We're back again next Friday, same time, 6 o'clock. Every Friday, I'll be here to answer all your questions. So they don't have to be specifically related to tenancies. Can be even to do with sales, property management, rent arrears, etc. Anything, whatever you guys want to ask, feel free to ask at any time. What is fair wear and tear? Very good question. So fair wear and tear, again, it's down to what you sort of seem as fair wear and tear. It's all about negotiation, I guess, and depends on what your landlord or your letting agent also sees as fair wear and tear. So for example, let's say you've got a brand new carpet when you moved into your property, etc. And now you've been there for like a year, 2 years, obviously 4 years, 5 years, whatever period of time that you've been at your property. Usually it comes down to, you know, like a discussion with the landlord, etc. He will say to you, look, you know, you've been here for a certain period of time. I think you've absolutely wrecked the carpet. Can you please replace it when you go out? And that will be your responsibility to obviously deal with that. And if you don't agree with that, then obviously it's, you know, there is guidelines in order to sort of give you sort of like an indication of which direction you're heading in. So the general guideline is let's keep a carpet in this example, just to keep it nice and simple. Let's say, for example, the carpet cost £1,000 for some reason, right? It's £1,000 carpet, laid it on the floor, bang, you moved into the property, and now you've been there for 1 year. You're moving out, and the carpet is totally wrecked. It's absolutely trashed. It's got mud, etc., everything all over it, and loads of stains and the carpet. Iron marks, etc., everything. No, it's essentially it's no longer how it was supposed to be given to the next tenant that's moving into the property. So in that sort of circumstance, each year that goes by, you can remove 20% of the cost from there. So for example, let's say it's £1,000 carpet. You've been in there for 1 year. You can take off 20% of the cost, and you will need to cough up the remaining amount. So let's say in this case you have to pay £800 towards the carpet. So moving on to year 2, say for example you've stayed there for the 2nd year, you are liable for, let's say, £600 roughly, because 40% is removed because you've been there for, you know, 4 years. So it keeps going on. So the 3rd year you're paying something like 40%, and the 4th year you're paying about 20%. Let's say you've been in the property for 5 years now, the carpet is totally trashed, etc., everything. If you want to, you can replace it. That's entirely up to yourself, but generally, considering under fair wear and tear, you would not be liable for paying for that. So it's 20%. If you times that by 5, that's 100%. So that's 100% would be wiped off. So whenever the landlord needs to replace that carpet, you would not be liable for it, etc. Unless you both come to your own agreement, you know, somewhere down the line, etc. You know, split halfway, 50-50. But again, you can either go down the route where you both agree mutually and you both are in agreement with each other, or you can go down the guidelines, etc. And if there is a dispute or disagreement, so there's 2 ways of doing it. You can refer to guidelines online, or you can go through adjudication, etc., where adjudicator will decide exactly what the carpet looked like beforehand, how much you should pay for the carpet, etc. Any more questions? We'll wait another minute. Let's see what comes through. Fahad, I can see your comments. You should be asking a few more questions. Waiting for some questions from you. I've got one just here. Can a letting agent ask you for more than 1 month's deposit? 5 weeks, yes, which is just slightly over 1 month, but not more than that. The reason being is because there's been a ban. There's been a cap on how much deposit you can actually take. So the cap is at 5 weeks. There is a few ways around it, not like a loophole or such, but there's a few ways around it in terms of, for example, if your letting agent does want something more than that, the correct and the legal way of doing it is through a guarantee scheme, where I can't think of any sort of names for schemes that sort of do it right now, but the tenant pays like a small fee towards a company for the deposit. And then that company insures them up to, I think, 8 weeks or 12 weeks or 16 weeks worth of deposit. So whenever a repair is to be done at whenever you move out the property and a claim needs to be made, the agent would make a claim directly upon the policy that you've taken out. So that covers the agent or the landlord for more than 5 weeks that you might have. Any more questions? Let's wait for another minute. I keep saying another minute, but more and more keeps coming through. So let's see what else comes through. What if I'm in dispute with my landlord regarding the deposit? Um, so I've been getting a lot of tenant inquiries today, so happy with that. There's no problem with that as well. Happy to have any sort of question. So very simple, straightforward. If you are in a dispute with your landlord, there's loads of things you could possibly go around and get done with, to be honest. First of all, it's very, very important that you sort of do a bit of research in terms of finding out what is fair and what's not fair in terms of, for example, let's say maintenance and repairs, etc. Once you got that perspective, you may agree with your landlord, or you still may not. It's possible that your landlord may be unreasonable, but equally at the same time, he may have possibly more experience than yourself as well. So he may possibly be reasonable, and you might not be up to speed with the sort of standards. But it could be either way. Obviously, I don't know your case at the moment in terms of where you are standing and what kind of dispute it is. It's very limited, the question that you've written there. So it's just depending on exactly what's going on there. What I would recommend you is obviously do your own research, do some fact checking, etc. Everything, and thereafter raise it up and provide sort of evidence as to why you feel that that the landlord is being fair or unfair, etc. If you still don't come to an agreement, you can get arbitration. Simply, so us as a company, we tend to do it through DPS. So, for example, let's say it's a dispute over. Let's come back to the carpet again. Let's say it's a dispute over the carpet. The landlord said, nope, he wants full money. The tenant doesn't want to pay anything towards it, etc. Despite of they've been there for 2-3 years, whatever. And they're both not coming to an agreement. Simple, straightforward method is just to go through DPS, arbitration, adjudication. So what will happen there is an adjudicator will have a look at your case, see the evidence from the landlord side, see the evidence from the tenant side, and decide for you as to what the right decision is to be. That decision is binding. So what that means is when the adjudicator has made his decision, the landlord has to accept that decision, and the tenant also has to accept that decision. You can't enter into an adjudication without pre-agreeing that you will approve and agree also with the decision that's been made by the adjudicator. I hope that helps. If you have any particulars about that question, feel free to comment, and I'll be happy to delve a bit further into it if you need me to. So I'm streaming to about 8 different platforms right here, so I'm getting questions from different platforms. I'll just wait for another minute. Any more questions, let me know. Right, I think no more further questions. It's been great, all the questions you've asked me so far today, so I'll make a note of them. I might produce something at a later stage. So back here again next Friday, 6 o'clock. If you've got any questions, note them down and do ask me next week. And see you guys soon. Bye for now.